Hello again everybody, and welcome to this edition of Jersey Shore Pondscapes videos. Today we are talking about gravity-fed filter systems. Now, a gravity-fed filter system is something that is not as common in ponds as like a bead filter or a skimmer or something like this. It's a little more specialized, but for me, it is absolutely the best way to filter a pond. Okay, I use these gravity-fed filter systems in every pond I've ever built, and I will use them in every pond I ever will build in the future. Okay, so how does this work and what is it? All right, so a gravity-fed filter system is basically where we use a 4-inch bottom drain like this in the bottom of our pond, and we use 4-inch PVC pipe from the drain, fed underground, out to wherever we place this filter tank. Okay, now this filter tank needs to be set, the top of the tank I set about 3 to 4 inches above the water level in the pond. All right, now how does this work? So picture 2 cups of water. All right, we have 2 cups with a straw connecting the 2 at the bottom. All right, so 2 cups of water. If I pour water into 1 cup, the water is going to flow down through the cup, through the straw, and both cups are going to fill up at the same time. Okay, now if you imagine 1 cup is the pond and 1 cup is this filter tank. All right, the straw is the bottom drain with the PVC pipes connecting. All right, so we have 2 cups now, we have them full of water. If I put a pump here on this filter tank, this pump is going to pull water out of the tank, and it's going to make that water level in the tank drop just a little bit. And that imbalance is going to make this, the pressure here, want to refill it. So as I'm pulling water out of this cup, my filter tank, okay, the water in this cup, the pond, wants to refill it. So it's gravity, okay? It's just a gravity-fed system. So what's really nice about this is I can put my pumps right here next to the tank, and I'm literally pulling the water from 2 feet away. Okay, right from the tank right into my pump, and then out of the pump it can go through a bead filter at that point and through a UV light back to the pond, back to the waterfall, wherever we want to go with it. But the beauty of this whole thing is how the water comes down to the bottom drains, out the bottom of the pond, through the filters, all with gravity. Okay. Now, I have another video out here on this channel about using bottom drains versus using ponds with rocks and gravel. And please check that out, because I really go into the differences between the 2 types of ponds. So if we have bottom drains in our ponds, just quickly, we're not going to have rocks and gravel in it, okay? Because the rocks and gravel will accumulate around here and clog it. The whole purpose of these bottom drains is to have a nice clean liner. So any sediment that settles down to the bottom of your pond will go right down the drain, right out the pipes, come through into the bottom of this filter tank, and then inside this filter tank I'll either put maybe a couple bricks, or I'll cut off a couple sections of PVC pipe, maybe 5-6 inches tall, put them on the bottom, and then we're going to put filter pads on top, several layers of filter pads on top of that. And then on top of that I use these bags of ribbon called Biofill. I have another video you might want to check out on the different types of filter media, so you'll see like what all that is. But the real advantage of this is all the dirt goes down the bottom of the pond, through the drain, out, down the pipes, and into the bottom of this tank underneath the filter pads. Then the water flows up through all the filter pads, right? And then a pump pulls it off the top of the tank and returns it, through UVs or wherever. So the advantage is all my water has been filtered, all the sediment and debris is filtered out of the water before it gets to the pump. So the pumps hardly ever get clogged. Okay, obviously here we're using an external pump on this. sorry, something like this one right here, okay? And this pump would sit right up here next to the tank. Just pull the water right out of it. I have a check valve in here. We're going to do a 2-inch bulkhead fitting in the top of the tank for the suction line for the pump. And in the bottom of this tank, I'm going to pull this up. We're going to drill 2 holes, right? We're going to take our hole saw here, and we're going to drill those 2 holes in here, and we're going to put these bulkhead fittings in. Okay, so this basically is a 4-inch bulkhead fitting, which means that it has a 4-inch threaded fitting in the front to thread in a 4-inch male PVC adapter. And you know, we simply just put these things right through the tank, and then screw our flange on the outside, and tighten them up. It is a reverse thread. Get them nice and tight on here. I usually, will tighten them up with a hammer and a screwdriver or a strap wrench. Okay, but this is basically what we're going to end up with. Okay, and our water's going to come inside from the pond right through these 2 fittings into the bottom of the tank. Now, right before this tank, I use either a gate valve like this, a 4-inch gate valve, or a 4-inch PVC ball valve. Okay, just be careful with the 4-inch PVC ball valves because the cheaper ones are extremely hard to turn, and so hard in fact that I've broken handles off of them. It's kind of stupid, right? You put a handle on a valve and then it breaks when you try to turn it. So anyway, these are really short and simple. Set this down. It's basically a blade inside this fitting that we lift up and down with this handle. Okay, so when it's up, the water goes right through. When we close it, it stops the water flow. So the reason why we use these, or a ball valve, is that so we can shut off the water flow between the pond and the filter tank when I need to clean this filter. Okay, so this way I put them right in the side here, right in front, bang, right in the front here, close it, and then we can drain all the water out of the tank and clean all the filter pads and all that stuff, okay? So it's just pretty simple. It's pretty easy. So that's basically the concept for a gravity-fed filter system. It just depends. The size of the tank depends on how many drains you have, which depends on the size of the pond, which depends on the size of the pump you have pulling water out of here. All right, so there's a lot of factors that we need to look at. All right, so let's just go over this really quick. So if I have one bottom drain in my pond, okay, with one 4-inch pipe out, maybe into a little small, this is a 150-gallon tank, let's say it's a 100-gallon tank or a 70-gallon tank, okay? One bottom drain would supply a pump up to around 4,000. 4,500 gallons an hour is pushing it, but usually around 4,000 gallons an hour, this has no problem. You can probably do 4,500 gallon per hour pump as well, providing that the pond is at least 2 to 3 feet deep. Okay, if it's really shallow, it might not be supplying enough water, and that is because of water pressure. Okay, in a pond a foot deep, we only have so much water pushing down on that drain to push the water out. If I have a pond 4 feet deep, we have all this water pressure pushing down to push that water out. So you'll get a little more water flow in a deeper pond than in a shallower pond, okay? But generally, as a rule of thumb, I'm somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500 gallons an hour per bottom drain, okay? So that kind of coincides with what size pond do we have, okay? If we have a 2,000 gallon per hour pond, a 2,000 gallon pond, maybe a pump, 4,000 gallons is enough to turn that pond over. Maybe you want to go bigger. Maybe you want a bigger waterfall and you want higher water flow. Maybe you want to put in a 6,000 gallon per hour pump. Well, that's fine, but then you're going to need 2 bottom drains, all right, with 2 pipes into a bigger tank, okay, something like this. So it all kind of goes together, okay? So roughly figure 4,000 gallons per hour per drain in an average pond, 2, 3, 4 feet deep would be great, okay? So 7,500 gallon per hour pump, you can go with 2 bottom drains, all right? An 8,500 gallon per hour pump, you're gonna be close, you'll probably be okay. But if I'm up 9, 10,000 gallons, I want 3, okay? If I'm 12,000 gallons, I want 4 bottom drains, right? Now, we don't always have to use bottom drains either. I've talked about this in videos about skimmers, where I've taken big skimmers and I've put in one of these 4-inch bulkhead fittings into the skimmer and gravity fed that out into a tank as well. Okay, so you know how many tanks, how many bottom drains, it's all got to be, you know, custom to the way you want to design the pond. I've designed ponds where I've had 2 bottom drains into a 150 gallon tank, and I've put a 4-inch bulkhead fitting into a skimmer and fed that skimmer into a separate 100 gallon tank. And I have a 4,000 gallon per hour pump on my skimmer tank, and I have, you know, a 7,500 horsepower pump, a 7,500 gallon per hour pump on my filter tank. Okay, so just depends on how much we want to do. I could put 2 of these tanks with 2 pipes into each one and put a, you know, a 12,000 gallon per hour pump on it, because I'll have 4 bottom drains. 2 into this tank, 2 into that tank. Okay, so that's basically how it works. You can pump a ton of water through a 4-inch pipe. I mean, a boatload of water you can pump through it. But through gravity, it's a little different. Okay, it's definitely not as much. So keep that, keep that in mind when you're figuring out your size of the pond, with how many drains you need and how big of a filter and what size pump will handle it. So roughly, just really easy, 4,000, 4,500 gallons an hour per drain. Okay, and you'll have no problem. Just always remember, you need some kind of a gate valve or ball valve in front of your tank. Now, there are some ball valves that are big 4-inch ball valves that have these unions on them. They're called a true union ball valve. Those are really good. They turn much easily, but they're also like $300 a piece. So just keep that in mind. All in all, this setup in a pond, be it 1 bottom drain or 2, okay, the only difference is I got maybe $50, $75 more for a 150 gallon tank as opposed to a 100 gallon tank. Okay, we're going to have extra PVC pipe, right? The 2 bottom drains. You know, these drains right here are roughly around 140, 150 bucks each. Your gate valves are around $100 each. The ball valves can be $300 each. All in all, this setup, say with 1 bottom drain, right, pipe off to the pond, say within 20, 30 feet, 25 feet of the pond, 100 gallon filter, ball valves, bulkhead fittings, all the filter media inside, the whole setup, you're probably looking at less than $1,000, just under $1,000. A comparable bead filter to move the same amount of water on the same size pond, you're probably looking at least $1,500 to $2,000. So this is definitely a little bit cheaper system. However, it requires a little more work to install. All right, it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy. You just really got to just dig a hole and put this tank in, and then dig a trench from the tank back to your pond for the plumbing, and then do your pipe work and connect the drain. It's not crazy hard. All right, it's not crazy hard. I'll be doing videos that shows all that stuff and the construction of ponds. You'll see all that stuff in the works. But it's cheaper in the long run, and to me, this is the best filter system you can put on a pond. I'm not saying that bead filters and all these little filter tanks on top of this waterfalls and all that stuff is bad. They're not. They work great, and I have a lot of clients with bead filters and stuff like that. You can get crazy with filtration. We can get into drum filters. We can get into all kinds of trickle down things. But the basics of filtration are really all the same. It's all pretty simple. You know, to me, this is the best filter system I've ever used. I've been building ponds with these same systems for over 25 years, and they've been great. The maintenance is minimal. I come back once a month and I clean this tank. If I have a bigger tank on a smaller pond, it might not even need to be cleaned, you know, a month, 2 months maybe, every 2 months. But the more you clean this tank, the easier the job will be, because it'll be less dirty, all right? And the cleaner your pond will stay. So I go on a monthly schedule basis, and these things are great. I come in, it takes me 20 minutes, a half hour to drain the tank, take the pads out, wash it all down, shop vac the muck out of the bottom, put everything back in, open my valve, prime my pump, and away it goes. So to me, this is it. Okay, I have clients that have put bead filters, you know, in after these, and that's incredible. All the sediment, all the debris gathers in here. The pump is pulling out clean water and then pumping it through a bead filter. The bead filters hardly ever need to be backwashed. There's nothing in it. All the garbage is in here. Okay, so they really work. I'm not saying you never have to backwash your bead filter. You should do that regularly as well. It's just that what comes out of it is far less than what would come out of it if you're sucking directly from the pond into a pump and into a bead filter. Far less, like not even close. Okay, so yeah, and then what I do with these things, once they're in the ground, I've got everything done, everything attached. I put bluestone on top. This is a bigger tank, all right, width-wise. So if I'm putting bluestone on top of this, I would get 4 2x2, and I would just put a 2x4 here across, a little 2x4 here across, and a 2x4 there across, and I'd put a 2x2 here, a 2x2 here, a 2x2 here, and a 2x2 here, and we're covered. Otherwise, I've built like little decking on top, you know, just real simple, just a little wooden frame with some decking on top, and it kind of covers that too. Yeah, all right. Winter time, it's really easy. You know, we close those valves, clean the filters, clean this whole thing out and leave it empty. I cover the top with an old piece of pond liner or a little tarp, but you know, just a piece of pond liner over the top will cover it and keep it dry and keep rain and snow and everything else out. And come springtime, we just take it off, open that valve, connect my pump, turn it on. Okay? So, lastly, last point. We're going to talk biological and mechanical filtration, okay? Now, 2 types of filtration. Biological filtration is basically due to a bacteria that does a chemical process in the pond that basically turns ammonia into nitrites and nitrites into nitrates. Ammonia and nitrites are toxic. Nitrates are far less toxic. Okay, so that's our end result. So biological filtration means we want to remove the ammonia, toxic ammonia and nitrites out of our pond. Okay, and it's done so by 2 types of bacteria that grow on the media in your filters. Now, mechanical filtration is basically the removal of sediment, mud, sludge, silt, sand, leaves. Okay. Filter pads are great for this, okay? So, what are we getting out of this? Mechanical or biological, okay? For me, this is just my concept. Mostly mechanical. This is cleaning the silt and sediment out of the water. Now, we're getting bacteria on here too, absolutely, all right, for biological. But my thing is with this is I want to keep this clean. So I'm going to come in here every month, I'm going to take these pads out, and I'm going to hose them all down and wash all that mud and silt and everything out of them. Shop vac all the crap out of the bottom of the tank, okay, and put everything back in. So people have said to me, well, aren't you washing away all your bacteria? Well, maybe, some of it, maybe, probably, okay, but here's the thing. Your bacteria in whatever filter, a bead filter, a whatever, is not going to grow and function and survive if it's buried in sludge. Okay? It needs a clean, oxygenated environment. So if your filter pads or your bead filter is all full of sludge and sediment and muck in there, you're not going to have any biological filtration. So what I found over the years, 25 years of doing this, more, I really rely on these filters more mechanically. Clean all the crap out of water, keep my water clear. All right, get all that mud and sediment and silt and fish waste that's all going down at the bottom of my pond, out those drains and into here so I can get rid of it. So it's in here and not in my pond. Now, I clean these things once a month. I have never had a problem with any water quality issues in my pond because I'm washing away any bacteria in here. I truly believe that 90%, well, let's say at least 75, 80% of all your biological activity in your pond is going on in your pond, not here, not in a filter. Not in this case, okay? Your pond liner, your rocks, your gravel, whatever you have in that pond, your waterfall, your stream bed, all that bacteria is growing on that pond liner, on those rocks, whatever you have in the pond, okay? That's natural. I think 75, 80%, maybe more of your biological filtration activity is in your pond. Because I can't tell you how many ponds I've seen that have some tiny little crappy filter and the water quality's fine. Like there's no ammonia nitrate problem. The bacteria is in the pond, okay? So for me, I'm cleaning this thing as much as I can to keep that pond clean. All right? Bead filters as well, same thing, okay? They work great for biologics if it's clean. If it's all full of silt and mud and dirt and muck in there, you're not going to have as much biological filtration. Okay? So for me, I've used bead filters after this, not because this is not keeping my water clean, because I don't need a bead filter after this. I hardly ever use bead filters after this. The only time I do that is if it's, you know, a really extraordinary pond and we're spending a lot of money in this whole system and maybe we want a little extra filter just to polish the water a little bit. Or if I know there's going to be a heavy fish load, we can add extra biological filtration with that bead filter. And that works incredibly well after this. So I'll go through my gravity fed tank, into my bead filter, out of the bead filter, through a UV, and then, you know, return back, waterfall, whatever. And that's just an amazing system. Okay? So that's my rundown on gravity fed filters. I hope you learned something a little bit and it helped you out. Please check a bunch of my other videos. The one on skimmers, we talk about gravity feeding skimmers. I have one on rocks versus, rocks and gravel in the bottom of the pond versus using bottom drains. I have one video on just bottom drains. So check all that out, learn as much as you can. And these systems are awesome. I really, like I said, I'm not saying that nothing else works. To me, I think this works better than anything. The maintenance is easy, the ponds stay crystal clear. It's an awesome system. Okay, so thank you for watching the video. Please hit the like button if it helped you out. Hit subscribe if you'd like to see my other videos. I got a ton of videos on here. And I have a website, pondscapesandmore.com. Please check that out. You can see a bunch of pictures and descriptions on ponds I've built in the past. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.